this is Outside the Box. Standing by to join me is Dr. Bryan Robinson. He's a psychotherapist in private practice in North Carolina. He's also a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's a licensed clinical mental health counselor and so much more. He was actually on my other show, Get the Funk Out, a while ago. We talked about his book, Chill, and I just heard he has another book coming out, and he's also part of a big conference going on called Resiliency. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Janine. It's great to be here. I wanted to also mention that I'm a co-founder of something called ComfortZones Digital, and it's for anybody who's struggling with work-life balance. And I'm the co-founder and the chief architect, which means I just help develop the content. That's
great. And such important content, especially right now, here we are, 2022. What has life been like for you, doing things remotely with patients, seeing what's going on in this mental health pandemic?
Well, for me personally, it's one thing, but for what I'm hearing from patients, it's a different story. I'm personally fortunate enough to live in the North Carolina mountains, and I have a lot of nature around me. The bears come, they were just here a few minutes ago. They come almost every day. And so we have a lot of wildlife. So I haven't had cabin fever. I've got a lot of places to move around.
It's good.
So there for a while, of course, like most therapists, I was doing all digital, virtual therapy. But it's been sobering to see how many people are struggling with mental health issues, not just, here, but all over the world, really.
Right.
And the amount of burnout that's occurring, it's just gone through the roof. So people have been suffering, and some people still are, just with the isolation and starting to question, who am I and what do I want to keep doing this? Because life's so short, and
yes.
A lot of existential questions coming up for people, which is why we have the Great Resignation. We had 4 million people in February again leave their jobs looking for something else. So it's been a huge transformation personally and work-wise and socially for people.
Yes. It's interesting. I don't think I shared this with you, but I started Outside the Box, I would say April 2020, after, millions of people losing jobs. And I thought, okay, what could I do to help? Perhaps interview people, industry experts offering advice on how to be an entrepreneur, how to pivot, et cetera. And then I noticed on LinkedIn, a lot of Gen Z college students or going off to college, they were reaching out to me and asking for some time. And absolutely, I spoke to everyone. And we would talk for about an hour and figure out a plan. Like, okay, you wanted this internship and that's gone. Maybe reach back out to your high school, your college, and some did get opportunities. But the point is, I started thinking, wait a minute, I'm missing another audience here. And they're very impacted by what's going on through the economy, the pandemic, everything.
Right. And it's affecting everybody, but I think especially the younger generation today is really having trouble with it. One of the things that I always come back to is self-care, but a different kind of self-care. When we think of self-care, most people think of exercising, taking a bubble bath, eating well, getting good sleep. Those are all critical. I mean, those are the foundation. But I've started lately taking it a step further because we're dealing with such challenging issues. I talk about radical self-care. Now, the word radical, it's a different thing for each person. But when I say radical self-care, a lot of people think self-care is selfish or narcissistic. It is not. It's one of the self-care and self-compassion is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves, because nobody on this planet can do that for Janine or Bryan except Janine and Bryan. It's like, that old airplane metaphor. If the oxygen mask dislodges, who do you put it on first?
You first.
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it, because that doesn't sound so selfish. But if we talk about, somebody wants me to do something and I feel guilty because I need to rest, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, that's not okay. Right. It's okay to say no. It's okay to put yourself first if you're already stressed and burned out. And a lot of people don't know that. It seems like a simple concept, but I think we need to get back to the way we build these blocks, for whether it's community-wise, national-wise, or internationally, is to start with ourselves first. And if I'm in good shape, mentally and physically, then I can help other people and I can help change things in my own little corner of the world.
Yes. I think about being a mom, how when my kids were little, I started taking one day a week, one evening a week, and I'd go take a class in screenwriting or an acting class, or it was always something. So I could do something for myself. And then they would see that, oh, mom does something for herself. Yeah. She's separate. She has a separate life. And I have this love of learning, and I've continued it. So I can completely tell when I need to delve into, let's say, guitar, and that's my flow state, right? And that recharge makes me a better parent.
Yeah. And I want folks to know this. I keep up with the neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm fascinated by the mind-body connection. And historically, people have thought that was kind of woo-woo in quotation marks, strange that the body, what in the world could the body have to do with the mind? But I want to just mention a recent study I read, just as an example. And the researchers, these were neuroscientists, studied two groups of people, one of which practiced self-compassion. That means they treated themselves well, like they would their best friend or a family member. They spoke to themselves in kind ways. They did nice things for themselves. Those folks, compared to the other group who did not practice self-compassion, had lower cardiovascular risk. Now, they measured that by measuring the linings of the blood vessels of both groups, and they found less plaque and thinner linings of people who practice self-compassion. So whatever we think and feel will find its way into the body. That's just one example. But treating ourselves with care and love is a healthy thing to do. It's not a narcissistic thing to do.
Yes. And when you think about all the factors that have compounded stress the past few years, more reason to focus on, as you said, self-care.
Yep. And that includes the way we talk to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
I have so many people when I see clients, we all use the word should, and we all use the word must, and we all use the word I have to. But when you really take a breath and step back, those words are oppressive, and we don't realize what we're doing to our internal nervous system. In fact, a lot of psychologists use terms like shitty thinking or masturbation to help people remember when you're using those words, you're stressing yourself out because you're imposing pressure on yourself. Now, and that's just a micro change, micro adjustment. If you could think about and catch yourself when you're shitting on yourself or masturbating and say, I get to do my homework, or I get to go for that job interview, or I get to help my friend, or I get to go to work instead of I have to or I must. It makes a big difference in what gets translated into our bodies.
Yes. And I have noticed too, because I mentioned I started going to therapy a year ago, that there's a lot of patterns from like negative thoughts could come from negative people from when I was younger. And I've just kept those stories on repeat, or those opinions on repeat, and they don't add any value to my life.
That's right. They extract the value, when we, scientists talk about a negativity bias. So we do have a hardwired predisposition to look at the negative for survival. So we all have that. That's just part of what Mother Nature gave us because she wanted us to survive. Knowing that there are times if you're walking from your office into the dark parking garage, you want to pay attention for especially nowadays with what's going on in the news. However, you also want to be vigilant that there are times when we may be using negative or looking at the negative side of something when in fact it doesn't relate to survival. It could be our relationship or our job or our parenting. So it's important to ask yourself, how am I looking at this situation? Take a breath and step back and see if you can look at it in a different way. And
Definitely.
we call that, I call it expanding your perspective.
Yes.
Because Mother Nature, whenever we're threatened by something, the mind automatically zooms in and you cloud out everything else. That's so you can react quickly. And if somebody calls me a bad name, that may happen because that can be a threat. And then I may respond from that place in an ugly way. But if I'm able to put the wide angle lens on and realize this is just someone who's upset with me and I have a choice of how I want to respond, it's amazing how that can bring me calm. It takes practice, but the wide angle lens is the key to acting instead of reacting.
Yes, that's great insight. I wanted to ask you, how do you think we're going to move out of this mental health pandemic, as far as any advice on what could be done in schools and businesses to affect positive change?
Well, I do think it starts with each one of us individually in our own little corner of the world, but more globally in schools and just nationwide, it involves education. And I think the first thing that needs to happen, and this is happening actually, is we need people to know that mental health is no different from physical health.
Right.
But we treat it differently. There's a stigma to it. So by removing the stigma of mental health and people understanding that if you have a mental illness, that's no different really than having a headache or, a shoulder that needs surgery or whatever. Naomi Osaka, if those of you who are listening remember, what happened is she was forced to confront the press when she was struggling with anxiety and depression. And they fined her $15,000. And then they said, now either you meet the press and deal with this or you're out of here. Well, think about that now. If she had a physical injury, they wouldn't have required that.
Yes, exactly.
But this is a woman who, she was one of, I think, maybe the top
tennis player. Yeah.
But also, I think she was the biggest money earner too.
Mm-hmm.
So when she stepped back and said, "I'm not going to do this," she was scorned by people. But I think that's a great example of how we have to rethink mental health and consider it as what we can see what just happened with Naomi Judd.
Right.
Yeah. Another example of someone who worked her behind off trying to save herself and she couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So mental illness is if you got a broken leg and you have a cast and you need time off, or if you need people to help you, we need to have that same outlook with mental illness or mental health. We don't, and that's unfortunate.
Right.
So I think that's where it all begins, and I think that ought to begin in the schools. I think we ought to be talking about mental health and mental illness and what is it really. People are scared of it. They think it's strange or weird, but it isn't. We're all in the same boat. You and I were just talking about this. We all are struggling with something. Every single person listening or watching right now is struggling with something, and that makes you normal. We're all in the same boat. Everybody is.
Right.
We just don't talk about it because we're afraid somebody will think we're strange or we'll be judged. And that's what we need to get over.
I agree. And one of the things I'm going to bring up is also, we have STEAM and STEM that were adopted in schools, but mental health has not been embedded into the curriculum to take such a, priority. And I feel that teachers have gone through so much. I mean, they've left the profession, that there needs to be policies in place that makes mental health a priority. Yes, I know you have your academic goals and you got to meet your deadlines, but without mental health, the students, where are they? They're nowhere. Then they go off to college. And as one college student told me, then I have stress and anxiety that
Yeah.
I'm still dealing with. And then what happens when I'm an adult?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see so many kids that go off to college unprepared for the stress. And this is when, it's that transition into being more of an adult because you're away from home.
Yes.
And the stresses they're just not prepared for. And that's when some people end up with depression and anxiety, or anorexia, or eating disorders, or
Substance abuse. Yeah.
trying to cope with the stress because they don't have the armor and the equipment to do it.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm glad we're on the same page. I suspected we would be, because I really do feel that policies need to be put into place in schools. It starts in schools, and then businesses. Not every age group will be comfortable saying, I'm going to take a mental health day. I know, talking to perhaps Gen Z, some tend to be more comfortable opening up and saying, I'm taking a mental health day.
Yeah.
And somebody says, well, why'd you take a picture of you at the beach? That was my mental health day, sitting with a book on the beach. I mean, it's really no one's business. This is how you're spending your mental health day.
That's right.
But we do need to normalize it.
Yes. And, the way we're talking more, by the way, in business about normalizing mental health days, and more companies are starting to offer that instead of even calling it a sick day, call it a mental health day. I like the idea of flipping, I call it, is have more more green time to off balance my screen time.
Love it. Yes.
Have a to-be list alongside my to-do list. Being able to make a list of my tall comings to match my shortcomings.
I like that.
How are things happening that I can't control for me instead of to me? It just immediately throws a switch in your brain and helps you look at whatever's going on in your life in a different way. These are just little quick tools that I've developed, and I call them micro chillers, to help folks when they're dealing with stress to get more centered. And there's the center I call the C spot, because there's so many C words associated with it, like calm, clarity, confidence. You're more creative.
Wasn't that that was your book after Chill? Wasn't it micro? What was your next book after Chill?
Well, the next one is, it's going to be in the book. It's called Chained to the Desk. But yeah, the whole idea of micro chillers and the C spot is all in there. And it talks about how you get into your C spot, which is, it's some revolutionary new therapy, but it's not therapy in the book, but little simple steps on how you can move from being stressed into that place in 5 minutes or less.
And when you think about the habits of the simple things, brushing your teeth, flossing your teeth, brushing your hair, you can take these small steps and build them into a routine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Most of us are thinking about the next thing we're going to do, or what we didn't do right yesterday, or what's upcoming, and we might be worried about a test or an exam, or a presentation we have to give to our colleagues. But what we have found in the research is, if I can start to be aware, that's the first A, I'm aware that I'm already thinking about tomorrow, and I'm not in the right now. When we can be more in the right now, we call it mindfulness.
Yes.
It's a powerful, powerful tool to learn when our mind starts wandering, is to bring it back with love and compassion, and just notice in this moment what's going on. Listen to the sounds around you for just a few minutes, or notice the colors, or the sky, or the trees. And that is a micro chiller that you'll start to notice. If you do this for 1 minute, you will notice in 1 minute you're calmer. You're in your C spot. If you do it for 5 minutes, you notice it even more. And if you have a practice, it builds up over time so that what you're feeling inside overshadows or gives you more power to deal with whatever is looming on the horizon. So these micro chillers, it's really powerful stuff, and they're very simple. Simple things. They're not complicated to do, and they're portable and they're free, and they take very little time. So I use them sometimes when I'm walking from my car to my office. Instead of thinking about what I'm going to do next, I'm just aware of the sounds around me. And today, the beautiful day we had yesterday and today in the mountains where I live, is just really paying attention. And so I go into the session calm, centered, curious.
Great.
All those good C things.
Do you think the pandemic shined a light on the fact that we were running at this fast speed and kind of this mindset of focusing on yourself and not others and not being thoughtful, that now is a time where I've seen people are more compassionate and being more thoughtful, less about themselves, looking up from their phones, hopefully.
Yeah. I remember here in Asheville, when the pandemic first started and people were quarantining, and I just noticed, and it was even written about, how people were allowing other people to get in front of them. There was less, I think nationally, we even found there were less mass shootings, for a lot of reasons. But like at Starbucks, I was at the drive-through and I started to pay, and the woman said, the person in front of you has already paid for your coffee, which seems like an insignificant thing, but it isn't. It's indicative of a feeling, a mood.
Yes.
And Dunkin' Donuts was giving free donuts to people, and there's just a lot of support and giving. And when I look at what's going on in Ukraine now, it seems like when we have tragedy, sometimes there's a lining in that. When we look at the spirit of the people in Ukraine, to me, I keep thinking, how can we build that here again in our country? And I think it starts with those small little gestures of, I love giving, I love paying for people's food. I don't want it to sound like I'm some great humanitarian, but it makes me feel good,
Sure.
Especially if I feel like they can't afford it. I had someone come up to me the other day when I was filling my gas tank, and she said, could you give me some gas? And my first thought was, oh, here we go. She's panhandling. And I looked at her, and she wasn't panhandling at all. She said, I don't have the gas to get back to my kids, and I had to come to court here. And I said, of course I'll give you gas. I filled up the gas tank, and halfway through, she said, no, that's enough. That's enough. I said, no, I'm going to fill it up. And she said, it's never been on full before. I've never been able to afford it. And it just broke my heart, but it also filled my heart at the same time.
Sure.
So I think if we could all have more of those kinds, just ask, it doesn't have to be money, but how can we be more, I call it kindfulness. How can we create more kindfulness, which, relates to mindfulness? We have to be aware first of where can we do that? Where can we, help other people? And it can be very small ways.
We're going to need a section of the dictionary named after all your cool terms. So tell me about the book that's coming out in 2023.
Well, it's called Chained to the Desk, and it's dealing or managing work-life balance in a hybrid world. So I interview or I write cases about people like Alanis Morissette, talking about her nervous breakdowns and near death. Ariana Huffington, who talks about her burnout and falling and breaking her cheekbone and waking up in a pool of blood. I know it sounds sensationalistic in a way, but these are people who are talking about work stress and burnout and how you can change that.
Yes.
Jewel, the singer,
Mhm.
talks about her life and how she stumbled into mindfulness, which is a fascinating story. Dan Harris, the former ABC correspondent, talks
Yes, I
about,
remember him.
yeah, his panic attack live TV, and how he now practices some of these tools that I was talking about, which has helped him move in more to his C spot. India RE, I don't know if you know her, the
I know
singer.
her. Yeah.
She's incredible. She's in the book. So Aaron Brockovich, and there's a singer by the name of Milk, Milck.
Yes, I'm actually interviewing her next week
For
for the She Rocks Awards.
Hello. Huh?
Yeah, she's going to be at the She Rocks Awards.
She's incredible.
Yeah,
she is incredible. Well, tell her I said hello.
I will.
And you might need to remind her who I am. I don't know if she'll remember, but
Okay.
I interviewed her. And the thing about her, and this kind of relates, I think, maybe to the younger generation, is I was so impressed because she had I'm sure she'll talk about this, recording contract with Atlantic Records, and they wanted her to do all the songs and then go from the corporate down to the grassroots. And she left that contract. She gave it up and said, no, I want to build the grassroots and go upward. And this is kind of what's going on in the world. A lot of the younger people who are working are saying, you're not going to treat me this way anymore. And I wanted to talk about this because this is with the Great Resignation. They're older folks too, but a lot of the younger folks are saying, I'm not going to sacrifice myself. I want to work at a place that cares about me, that treats me with respect. And that seems to be more important than the money and the benefits. Not that that's not important, but people are tired of the dark age way corporate America has been treating employees, and they're not going to do it anymore. So there's as a result of the pandemic, a huge good trouble going on that John Lewis used to talk about, good trouble, that a change is going to come, and we're never going back to being treated the way a lot of us have been treated. So I'm sure she'll talk to you more about that, but she's such an inspiration, not just as a singer, but her philosophy of life and how she is making these changes. So.
I can't wait now. That's great.
Yeah.
And tell me about your conference.
Well, the conference is, it's a resiliency conference we do every year on September 9th. And this year it's Resiliency 2022. And we have speakers from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to business, politics. We had Dr. Jill Biden a few years ago. We had Glenn Close. We've had Alanis Morissette. We had Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. This year we have Arianna Huffington, who is the CEO and founder of
Thrive Global.
Thank you.
I'm a writer for them.
I am too.
Yeah, I know you are. You've
You've
written some great articles, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And let's see who else. Jewel Milk is going to be there. She's going to be performing actually.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And so each person has like 4 minutes, but it's almost like a variety show. And these are people who are donating their time for all the frontline workers everywhere. And it's international. It's free. And if you want to sign up, you just go to resilienceandhappiness.com, I think it is.
Okay.
And it takes 2 minutes to sign up. It's free. And if you're a therapist or someone working in the mental health area, you get 4 free CEUs that, therapists have to have CEUs every year.
Yes.
So, and everything is free. And
That's
we
really
all donate our time. This is an example of how do we change the world? Well, we have so far every year we have had 7 of the 8 continents. I don't know why we don't have anybody from Antarctica. but it's probably too cold for them to.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But so it's worldwide, and it's just so exciting. Oh, I can't forget, it's Edith Eger, Eger. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's just a beautiful woman.
So it's resiliencyandhappiness.com.
Yes.
Oh, this is where I heard about Dr. Elkin from the Ukraine Ed Camp educators. I was trying to line up an interview with him.
Well, you know who can help you?
Who?
Elaine.
Elaine.
She says, yeah, Elaine Miller-Karras. And she's on here, by the way.
Okay. Where can people find out more about you and the work you're doing?
Well, my website is bryanrobinsonbooks.com, and it's Bryan with a Y, bryanrobinsonbooks.com. And on the website, you can take a test to see how chill you are. You can find out more about some of the books I've written. And there are a lot of podcasts on there, and a lot of, I hope yours will be on there after we do this, and a lot of just other things that I'm involved in. So
fantastic.
I hope everybody will check it out.
One last question. Any advice for somebody that's listening to this who is struggling?
Well, if we're all struggling, and some of us are able to get through whatever it is we're struggling with by talking to someone. But the main thing is find someone to talk to. And if it's a friend, a family member, sometimes we can't speak to our family members because we're too close. And so
right.
If not, find a counselor or go outside and find someone to talk to. But that's the main thing. Or even call a toll-free number, especially if you're in crisis. But you're not alone. That's the most important thing to know. It feels like you're alone, but you're not.
Great. I want to thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.